Triplets stand in court to defend their mum. Judge realizes he's the father who abandoned them. "Your Honor!" Malik's small voice cracked through the courtroom silence. The 7-year-old stood so suddenly his chair toppled over. "Please don't take our mama away." Gasps rippled across the gallery. Tasha reached out in panic, tugging at his sleeve. "Malik, sit down, please." But Maya jumped up too, her eyes wet with tears. "She's the best mom in the world. If you take her, you take us too." Judge Wright froze. The children's faces, those same bright eyes, that stubborn chin, struck something deep inside him. He gripped his gavel but didn't bang it down. Instead, he stared, unsettled, as if looking at echoes of himself. The prosecutor tried to cut in. "Your Honor, this is highly inappropriate." But then little Micah rose to his feet, holding up a paper with shaky hands. "She helps me study every night. I got 100 on my math test because of her. Please don't say she's unfit." The courtroom fell still. Tasha's tears spilled over. Judge Wright cleared his throat, his voice unsteady. "Order in this court." But no one could unhear what the children had just declared. That morning, hours before the courtroom scene, Tasha's day had already fallen apart. At Miller's diner, she tried to balance trays with one hand while keeping an eye on the triplets, seated quietly at the back booth. She prayed her boss wouldn't notice them. But Mr. Simmons's eyes were sharp. He stormed out from behind the counter. "Again, Tasha, this ain't no daycare." "Mr. Simmons, I had no choice. School let out early. I don't want to hear it," he barked, loud enough for customers to turn. "You're an embarrassment to this place." Gasps and chuckles rippled through the room. Malik shot up from the booth, face burning. "Don't talk to my mum like that. She works harder than you." The diner went quiet. Maya stood beside him, chin high. "You're just jealous 'cause nobody loves you." Simmons's jaw clenched. "That's it. You're fired. Get out." Tasha's lips parted in shock. She grabbed her kid's hands and rushed out before her shame drowned her completely. By evening, she trudged up the apartment stairs with weary legs. But taped to her door was another blow. Eviction notice. 10 days to vacate. Her hands shook as she tore it down. Neighbors whispered from their balconies, pitying and mocking all at once. She pressed the kids inside before their little ears could catch it. In the small living room, the weight of everything crushed her at last. She sank to her knees, sobbing. "I can't do this anymore." But the triplets knelt around her, holding her hands tight. Malik's voice was steady. "Don't cry, Mama. We'll fight for you." Maya leaned in close. "We'll never let them take us away." Micah whispered the final promise. "We're your soldiers, Mama, and soldiers never quit." That night, Tasha realized, her children might be small, but they were her strength, and the world was about to find out just how loud 7-year-olds could be. The pounding on the door rattled the walls. Tasha jumped, nearly dropping the cup she was holding. Malik opened it before she could stop him, and there stood Mr. Givens, the landlord, his belly straining against his shirt, his face twisted with disdain. "Rent's due, Miss Johnson. Matter fact, it's past due." His voice carried down the hallway so the neighbors could hear. "Mr. Givens, please," Tasha began, but he cut her off with a wave of his thick hand. "I don't want to hear excuses. I gave you enough chances. You and these 3 rugrats are out of here in 10 days. Don't pay up, don't bother staying." Maya stepped forward, chin high, fists balled at her sides. "Don't you dare talk to our mama like that." Givens bent low, sneering. "Little girl, you better learn some respect." "She earns respect," Maya snapped back, her small voice shaking but firm. "You just bully people 'cause you're mean." The neighbors on the stairs gasped and whispered. Givens's face turned red. "Control your kids before I call child services. Might be better for 'em anyway." At that, Malik stormed forward, planting himself in front of Tasha. You don't know anything about us. Mama works harder than anybody in this building. Boy, you better move. Givens leaned in close, but Malik didn't flinch. From behind her siblings, Micah's quiet voice rose, trembling but strong. We're not scared of you. We're not leaving Mama. The landlord scoffed, spit on the floor, and straightened up. Fine, you think you're brave? Let's see how brave you are when the sheriff's at your door. With that, he stormed off, muttering curses loud enough for the entire hallway to hear. Tasha's face burned with shame as the neighbor's eyes lingered on her. She shut the door quickly, locking it twice. Her children pressed close, wrapping their arms around her. Mama, don't cry, Malik whispered. He can't take us. We'll protect you. Tasha sank onto the couch, covering her face with both hands. Tears slid through her fingers, but her children didn't let go. Maya crawled into her lap, pressing her small forehead to her mother's chest. We got you, Mama. Always. The apartment was quiet again, but the words of the landlord hung heavy in the air. Foster care, the sheriff, 10 days. As the triplets held her tighter, Tasha knew the world was circling in on her, but she also knew one thing for certain. Her children were ready to fight, even if it meant going to war at just 7 years old. Sunday morning sunlight streamed through the cracked blinds as Tasha tried to pull herself together. Her eyes were still swollen from crying most of the night, but the triplets had already laid out their best clothes. Malik in his pressed shirt, Maya with her little ribbon, and Micah in a jacket that was 2 sizes too big, but still made him proud. Church today, Mama, Maya said firmly. Pastor Daniels will know what to do. Tasha hesitated. Baby, Pastor can't fix everything. But he can pray, Micah whispered, and sometimes prayers get answered. With no better options, Tasha gathered her strength. The 4 of them walked to Mount Zion Baptist, the little church on the corner that had been her anchor through storms before. Inside, the choir's voices lifted like thunder and honey, but Tasha couldn't shake her fear. When the service ended, she slipped into Pastor Daniel's office with her children. The pastor, a tall man with kind eyes, looked up from his desk. Tasha, child, what's wrong? Her voice cracked as she explained. Job gone, rent overdue, eviction looming. They're threatening to take my babies, Pastor. I don't know how much more I can take. The pastor leaned back, stroking his graying beard. You've always been strong, Tasha, but sometimes the strongest need help too. The church fund is stretched thin, but I'll see what I can gather. Please, Pastor, Malik blurted out, his little fists tight. Don't let them take us away. Pastor Daniel's eyes softened. He reached across the desk, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. No one's going to take you, son, not if I can help it. For a moment, Tasha felt a flicker of hope. But when they left his office, she knew the truth. The church couldn't save them from the landlord or the courts. Back home that afternoon, while Tasha cooked beans and rice for dinner, Malik wandered into her bedroom. He was searching for a pencil when he noticed something sticking out of a drawer. An envelope, yellowed with age. He tugged it free. Across the front, written in faded ink, was a single name, Anthony. Curiosity burned in him. He slid it open and pulled out a letter. The first line made his heart skip. Tasha, I can't be a father right now. My family would never accept this. I'm sorry. Before he could read more, Tasha burst into the room. Malik, what are you doing? She snatched the paper from his hands, her face pale as chalk. Mama, who's Anthony? He asked, eyes wide. Her chest heaved. She balled the letter up, tossed it into the trash, then struck a match and set it aflame right there in the metal waste bin. The paper curled, blackened, and vanished in smoke. That name doesn't matter, she whispered harshly. It never mattered. Don't you ever go through my things again. Malik backed away, hurt but more curious than ever. The fire in his mother's eyes told him there was more to their story than she had ever admitted. That evening, as the smell of burnt paper still lingered, another knock came at the door. This time, it wasn't the landlord. A tall woman in a grey suit stood with a clipboard pressed to her chest. "Mrs. Johnson?" she asked, her tone clipped but not unkind. "I'm Ms. Carter, from Child Services. I received a report about your living conditions. May I come in?" Tasha's stomach dropped. She wanted to slam the door shut, but Malik, Maya, and Micah were already at her side, peeking around her legs. Inside, Ms. Carter walked through the apartment, taking notes, peeling paint, empty fridge, stacks of unpaid bills. She watched the children too, how quickly they defended their mother, how tightly they clung to her hand. "Your children are very loyal," Ms. Carter said quietly, almost to herself. "They're all I have," Tasha replied, her voice trembling. Ms. Carter made a final note, then closed her folder. "We'll review the situation in court. Please be prepared." She left without another word. The moment the door shut, Maya looked up at her mother, her small face fierce. "They're not taking us, Mama. I don't care what they say." Micah nodded, clutching her apron. "We'll fight them." But Malik's eyes were still troubled. His thoughts kept circling back to the letter. The name Anthony burned in his mind like the flames that devoured it. Whoever he was, Malik felt sure that man was the key to everything. That night, as Tasha lay awake staring at the ceiling, she realized her children were right about one thing. A storm was coming, and soon the past she had tried so hard to bury would rise again, this time in a courtroom where the truth could no longer be hidden. The sun was barely up when the knock came. It wasn't the landlord this time. The sound was firm, official, and it made the walls shake. Tasha froze, spatula in hand, halfway through flipping pancakes. Her children stopped mid-bite, eyes darting to the door. "Who is it?" Malik whispered. Tasha didn't answer. Her heart already knew. She set the spatula down with trembling fingers, walked to the door, and opened it. A uniformed officer stood on the porch, his face blank. Beside him was a woman holding a sealed envelope stamped with the county seal. "Mrs. Tasha Johnson?" the woman asked. "Yes," Tasha croaked. "This is a summons to appear in family court. The state has opened a case concerning the custody of your 3 children." She handed over the envelope. "Failure to appear will result in immediate intervention by Child Protective Services." Tasha's breath caught. "Custody? You're saying—" "You'll have the opportunity to present your case in court," the woman interrupted briskly. "Details are inside. Good day, ma'am." The officer tipped his hat. Together they walked away, leaving Tasha in the doorway, envelope heavy in her hands. The triplets rushed forward. "Mama, what is it?" Maya asked. Tasha sank onto the couch, ripping the envelope open. Her eyes raced across the words, and her lips trembled. "They want to take you away from me," she whispered. "We have to go to court next week." "No!" Malik shouted, his small fists pounding the cushion. "They can't do that." Micah slid closer, tugging her sleeve. "Mama, we'll tell them. We'll make them listen." Tasha shook her head violently. "No, baby. Court is not for children. I'll handle it." But the triplets exchanged a look, their little faces fierce with determination. They weren't about to be silent. That night, Tasha sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands, the papers spread out before her. Malik lingered in the doorway, watching. "Mama," he said quietly, "you're scared, huh?" She lifted her head, trying to smile. "No, baby, I'm just tired." But Malik wasn't fooled. "We'll help you. You don't have to fight alone." Before she could answer, Maya stormed into the room, dragging Micah behind her. "We already started writing what we're going to say in court." "What?" Tasha stood up, alarmed. Maya slapped a crumpled piece of notebook paper onto the table. In big messy letters it read, "Our mama is the best mama in the world." Tasha's chest tightened. Tears welled in her eyes. "You children don't understand. Court isn't a school play. They won't just clap when you talk." "Then we'll make them listen," Maya shot back, stubborn as ever. Micah tugged on her sleeve, his voice soft but steady. "If we don't talk, they'll only hear lies about you. We gotta tell the truth." Tasha's tears spilled over. She pulled her children into her arms, hugging them so tight they could hardly breathe. "Oh, my babies, you're too brave for this world." Over the next days, the atmosphere in the apartment shifted. Where there had been despair, now there was a kind of determination. The triplets turned the kitchen table into their courtroom practice. Malik stood on a chair, pounding a plastic spoon like a gavel. "Objection!" he shouted. "My mama works hard every day to take care of us." Maya rolled her eyes. "You can't say objection all the time. You gotta tell a story." She stood and spoke to an imaginary judge. "Your Honor, every night Mama sings us to sleep even when she's tired. She never lets us feel unloved." Micah shuffled forward shyly, clutching his school certificates. "And I got these 'cause Mama stayed up helping me. That's proof she's a good mum." Tasha watched from the doorway, torn between pride and fear. Her children were rehearsing for battle they shouldn't have to fight. 3 days before the court date, the landlord appeared again, pounding on the door. This time, he had 2 men with him. "Clock's ticking, Miss Johnson," Givens sneered. 10 days are almost up. You don't got the money, you and these kids will be out on the street." Tasha stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind her so the kids wouldn't hear. "Please, Mr. Givens, I just need a little more time. After court, I'll figure something out." The landlord laughed, a cruel sound. "Court? You think they gonna side with you? Everybody knows you can't provide. Those kids will end up where they belong, in the system." The words hit like knives. Rage flared in Tasha, but before she could respond, the door burst open behind her. Malik stood there, fists clenched. "You're a liar!" he shouted. "Our mama's better than you'll ever be." Maya and Micah joined him, standing shoulder to shoulder. "We're not scared of you," Maya spat. The landlord's face darkened. "Little brats, you'll regret that." He turned and stomped down the stairs with his men. Tasha pulled her children back inside, her hands shaking. "Don't you ever open that door again when I'm talking to him. Do you hear me?" "But Mama," Malik protested, "he was lying on you. We can't just stay quiet." Tasha hugged him tight, her tears soaking his hair. "I know, baby, but sometimes staying safe means staying silent." The children exchanged a glance. None of them agreed. Silence had never saved them before. The night before court, Tasha couldn't sleep. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft breaths of her children huddled around her in bed. Her heart ached with fear. Fear of losing them, fear of facing the ghosts of her past. But in the dark, Malik whispered, "Mama?" "Yes, baby." "We're gonna win, 'cause we got the truth, and the truth is stronger than anything." Tasha closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. She kissed each of their foreheads. If the truth is what saves us, then maybe, just maybe, we'll be okay. When morning came, the family dressed in their best clothes again. The air was heavy with dread, but also with resolve. As they left the apartment, neighbors whispered, some with pity, some with cruelty. "Poor kids, never had a father. No way she'll keep them." The triplets heard every word, but they didn't flinch. Malik squeezed his mother's hand. Maya lifted her chin higher. Micah clutched his little folder of schoolwork like a shield. Tasha walked them down the street, each step heavier than the last. Ahead, The courthouse loomed like a fortress, and inside, their fate waited to be decided. The courthouse loomed like a giant made of stone, its steps worn from the feet of generations who had come to plead, confess, or fight. For Tasha Johnson, each step felt like lead. Her children's small hands clung to her skirt as they climbed together, their Sunday clothes pressed and neat, but their faces solemn. "Keep your heads up," Tasha whispered, though her own head hung heavy. "Don't let them see us weak." Inside, the hallway buzzed with voices, the scrape of shoes against marble floors, the clicking of pens. Lawyers strode past with heavy briefcases, their eyes skimming Tasha and her children as if they were already lost. When their case was called, they entered the courtroom. The ceiling soared high, the walls lined with wooden panels. At the bench sat Judge Anthony Wright, his black robe falling heavy around him. He adjusted his glasses, staring down at the woman before him, and then at the three children pressed close to her side. Something flickered in his eyes, something unsettled. "All rise," the bailiff called. "Court is now in session." Everyone stood. Tasha's knees trembled. When the judge motioned for them to sit, she pulled her children into the front row. The prosecutor, a tall man with slick hair and a voice sharp as steel, wasted no time. "Your Honor, this case is about three children living in unsafe, unstable conditions. Their mother, Ms. Johnson, has no stable income, no proper housing, and no father in the home to provide support. We will show that the children would be safer and healthier in state custody." Maya's little fists clenched at the words, "no father." Micah shrank closer to Tasha. Malik glared at the man, his small jaw tight with fury. The prosecutor called the first witness. To Tasha's horror, it was Mr. Givens, the landlord. He swaggered to the stand, tugging his tie. "Your Honor, that woman hasn't paid rent in months. Her kids run wild in the hallways, loud and unsupervised. It ain't fit for children. I run a respectable building and she's bringing it down." "That's a lie!" Maya cried, leaping to her feet. The whole courtroom gasped. Judge Wright's gavel slammed. "Silence in the courtroom!" Tasha tugged her daughter down, whispering, "Please, baby, not now." But Maya's eyes burned with tears. "He's lying, Mama. You're a good mom." The judge's gaze lingered on the child, then shifted back to the landlord. "Proceed," he ordered gruffly, though his voice carried a strange tremor. The prosecutor leaned in. "So, Mr. Givens, in your opinion, these children would be better off elsewhere?" "Absolutely," the landlord said, smirking. "Anywhere's better than with her." The words cut like knives. Tasha's face burned with humiliation. She wanted to shrink into the floor. Then, before she could stop him, Malik stood. His voice, small but unshakable, echoed in the hushed room. "That's not true. Our mama takes care of us better than anybody could. She stays up all night just so we can eat. She helps with homework. She makes us laugh. She—" "Order!" Judge Wright barked, but his gavel hung in mid-air. His eyes were fixed on the boy, and in those eyes was not just discipline, it was recognition. The prosecutor scoffed. "Your Honor, children have no place testifying in this manner." But Micah's shy voice piped up next, trembling but clear. He pulled a wrinkled paper from his little folder. "I got 100 on my math test. Mama stayed up with me even when she was tired. That proves she's a good mom." He held the paper up high, his small hands shaking. The courtroom fell silent. Reporters scribbled furiously. A woman in the gallery dabbed her eyes. Tasha buried her face in her hands. This was her worst fear, that her children would be dragged into the humiliation. Yet, at the same time, a spark of pride flickered. They were fighting for her the only way they knew how. The judge's hand trembled on the gavel. He stared at the children, his face tight. They looked so familiar, the shape of their eyes, the curve of their mouths. For a moment, his mind drifted back 7 years, a young woman, a night of passion, and the decision he had buried under shame and ambition. He shook it off, clearing his throat. Enough. This court will maintain order. Children are not permitted to interrupt proceedings. Ms. Johnson, control your family. Tasha swallowed hard, pulling her children close. Please, she whispered to them. I know you want to help, but let me handle this. But Malik's jaw stayed tight, Maya's eyes blazed, and Micah clutched his test paper like a weapon. The prosecutor smirked, as if he had already won. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Ms. Johnson cannot provide. These children are emotionally compromised and defensive, which further shows instability. We request immediate consideration of foster placement. The words hit Tasha like a hammer. She couldn't breathe. The room spun. But then, in the stillness, Malik's small voice rose again, defiant. If you take her away from us, you'll have to take us too, because we'll never leave our mama. The entire courtroom erupted, gasps, murmurs, shouts. The judge slammed his gavel, but his own composure was crumbling. He stared at the children, his throat tightening, his chest heavy with a truth he could no longer ignore. For the first time in his long career, Judge Anthony Wright felt the gavel slipping from his grip, not from weakness of law, but from the ghosts of his own past, staring back at him in the faces of 3 brave children. The gavel's echo still hung in the air, long after the triplets' voices had died down. Judge Wright sat rigid in his chair, his fingers drumming the bench. His jaw tightened, but his eyes kept wandering back, again and again, to the 3 children huddled around their mother. It was their eyes that unsettled him most. Malik's stubborn glare, Maya's fiery defiance, Micah's shy but steady gaze. They carried pieces of his own face, pieces he thought no one else had ever seen. He cleared his throat. The court will reconvene after lunch. His voice cracked slightly, betraying what his stoic expression tried to hide. As people filed out, whispers swept the gallery. Don't they look like him? One woman murmured. A reporter scribbled furiously, her eyes darting between the judge and the triplets. Tasha gripped her children's hands, rushing them toward the exit. But Malik, still fired up, whispered, Mama, why did he keep staring at us like that? Tasha shook her head quickly. Hush, baby. Don't ask questions we don't need answers to. Her voice trembled as though even saying it out loud might crack the fragile walls around her secret. During recess, Judge Wright retreated to his chambers, pacing like a caged lion. His clerk, a young man named Harris, peeked in cautiously. Sir, you all right? I'm fine, the judge snapped, then softened his tone. Just get me the case file again. Harris handed it over. Wright flipped through the papers. Unpaid rent, job termination, eviction notices. But it wasn't the paperwork that shook him. It was the scribbled notes from the social worker. Children extremely loyal to mother, protective, fiercely vocal. He closed the folder and pressed his palms against his eyes. In the silence of his office, memories clawed their way back. A younger Tasha, her laughter like music, his own cowardice the night he walked away, the letter he never should have written. Now here they were, living proof of his betrayal, standing in his courtroom, calling him Your Honor instead of Daddy. Back in the courtroom, the prosecutor wasted no time resuming his attack. Your Honor, the children's outbursts only confirm instability in the household. They're unruly, combative, and clearly under emotional distress. That's not fair, Maya blurted before she could stop herself. Her cheeks flushed, but her eyes stayed fixed on the prosecutor. We're not unruly, we just don't let people lie about our mama. The prosecutor smirked. There it is again, more proof these children lack discipline. The gavel came down hard, but Judge Wright's voice faltered. Order in the court. Children, you must remain silent. Tasha squeezed Maya's hand tight. Please, baby, I beg you, don't say another word. But her daughter's fiery spirit wouldn't be contained. They act like we don't matter, Maya whispered fiercely, her words carrying just enough to be heard by those nearby. But we do matter. The murmurs grew again in the gallery. The prosecutor rolled his eyes dramatically, turning back to the bench. Your Honor, perhaps the fastest way to end this nonsense is to order a paternity test. That way we can establish who, if anyone, should be responsible for these children other than Ms. Johnson. Tasha's entire body stiffened. The courtroom erupted in gasps. The judge froze, blood rushing in his ears. Paternity test. The very words made his chest tighten. The prosecutor pressed on. If their father can be identified, perhaps the court can consider his financial or custodial role. But at present, these children are effectively... He paused for effect. Fatherless. Micah's small voice broke through, sharp and clear. We're not fatherless. We got Mama. She's everything. The courtroom went silent again. The judge's gavel trembled in his hand. He wanted to shout at the prosecutor, to strike those words from the record, but his role was to remain impartial, to wear the robe of justice, not the mask of regret. Instead, he said hoarsely, "The court will take that suggestion under advisement." At lunch recess, the whispers turned to open gossip in the courthouse cafeteria. 2 junior attorneys huddled over their trays. "Tell me you see it," one said. "The eyes, the jawline," the other replied. "They look just like him." "And did you see how he kept staring? If I didn't know better?" "Shh, careful. That kind of talk could end a career." But the rumors had already begun to swirl, carried like wildfire through the marble halls. Meanwhile, in the small corner of the courthouse lobby, Tasha knelt before her children. "Listen to me," she whispered urgently. "You can't keep interrupting. Please, babies, they'll twist everything you say against us." Malik's eyes blazed. "But Mama, if we don't speak, no one will hear the truth." "I'll speak for us," she said firmly, though her voice cracked. "That's my job." Micah tugged her sleeve. "Mama, what if they ask about our dad?" Tasha's chest seized. For a moment she couldn't breathe. "Then you say nothing," she whispered fiercely. "Do you hear me? Nothing. That chapter of our lives is closed." But Malik, ever stubborn, muttered under his breath. "Maybe it's not closed. Maybe he's closer than you think." Tasha whipped her head around, eyes wide. "What did you say?" But Malik only shook his head, lips pressed tight. He'd seen the way the judge stared at them, and the thought had already begun to take root in his young mind. When court resumed, the tension was heavier, the air thick with unspoken suspicions. The prosecutor called the social worker, Ms. Carter, to testify. She described the apartment, the empty fridge, the eviction notice. "The children are clearly bonded to their mother," she said carefully, "but I worry their loyalty blinds them to the instability of their situation." Tasha gripped the bench so hard her knuckles turned white. Then, in a moment that shocked the room, Ms. Carter added softly, "Still, I've never seen children fight so fiercely for their parent. It says something about Ms. Johnson's devotion, even if the circumstances are dire." The prosecutor's face tightened, irritated at the hint of compassion. Judge Wright leaned forward, his voice low. "Thank you, Ms. Carter." He looked down at the children, then back at the papers on his desk, but the words blurred. His heart was pounding too loudly in his ears. For the rest of the afternoon, the testimony dragged on. Statistics, reports, accusations. But the only thing echoing in the judge's mind were the words he'd once written in a letter years ago. "I can't be a father right now. My family would never accept this. I'm sorry." And now, here they were, 3 pairs of eyes staring at him, with the truth he'd tried to bury. As the gavel came down at the end of the day, Judge Wright spoke in a voice rougher than usual. "Court will reconvene tomorrow morning." He rose quickly, retreating to his chambers before anyone could see the storm brewing in his face. Behind him, the children clung to their mother, whispering promises. "Don't worry, Mama. We'll never stop fighting for you." But even as Tasha hugged them tight, her heart knew the battle was only beginning. The second morning in court began heavy with whispers. Reporters filled the gallery, their cameras clicking each time Tasha and her children entered. Neighbors had shown up too, curious eyes waiting to see if the unfit mother would lose everything. Tasha's hands trembled as she straightened Malik's collar and smoothed Maya's ribbon. "Remember," she whispered, "no interruptions today. Promise me." But Malik looked her square in the eye. "If he lies, Mama, I'm not staying quiet." Her chest tightened. She didn't argue. She knew her children too well. When Judge Wright entered, his gaze once again swept to the children. He tried to bury the flicker of recognition, but it gnawed at him like hunger. The bailiff called for order. The prosecutor rose. "Your Honor, today we call a critical witness who can confirm Miss Johnson's inability to provide a safe environment for her children, Mr. Harold Givens, the landlord." The man strutted to the stand, adjusting his tie as if he were preparing for a parade. He smirked at Tasha, then leaned back in the chair like he owned the courtroom. "Mr. Givens," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court about Ms. Johnson's record as a tenant." "With pleasure," Givens said, his voice thick with malice. "She's a chronic late payer, always begging for extensions, always with excuses. The kids run wild in the halls, screaming, knocking on neighbors' doors. I've seen them digging in trash cans for food." Tasha gasped. "That's not true." "Silence, Ms. Johnson," the judge warned, though his voice lacked its usual force. Givens leaned forward, savoring the moment. "She's a danger to those kids. She can't keep the lights on, can't keep rent paid, can't keep food in the fridge. Frankly, she's unfit. Those kids deserve better." The prosecutor nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Givens. No further questions." The judge turned. "Ms. Johnson, do you have questions for this witness?" Before Tasha could answer, Malik leapt to his feet, fists clenched. "He's lying!" The gavel slammed. "Order!" Judge Wright barked, but Malik wouldn't stop. "We don't dig in trash cans. Mama makes sure we eat every night, even if she doesn't. She goes hungry for us, and he knows it." The courtroom gasped. The boy's voice rang louder than any lawyer's argument. Maya stood next, eyes flashing. "He just hates Mama because she asked for more time. He doesn't care about us. He only cares about money." Micah, though shaking, stepped forward too. He clutched his folder of certificates and shouted, "Look! Do you think kids who dig in trash cans win awards? My Mama makes us study. She makes us proud." The gallery erupted in murmurs. Some wiped tears. Others shook their heads in shock. "Silence!" Judge Wright's voice thundered at last, his gavel cracking down. But even as he scolded, his eyes lingered on the children. Their courage pierced through his robe, through his armor of authority. The prosecutor sneered. "Your Honor, this display proves my point. These children are unruly, combative, and manipulated by their mother." "Manipulated?" Tasha cried, rising at last. "You think I told them to speak like this? They speak because they love me, because they see the truth." Her voice cracked, and tears streaked her cheeks. "Don't punish them for fighting for what's right." The judge's gavel fell again. "Control your family, Ms. Johnson. One more outburst, and I'll clear the courtroom." But inside, Judge Wright's hands trembled. He couldn't erase the image of their faces. Tiny warriors, fierce and unafraid. He remembered another courtroom long ago, when he was just starting his career. how ambition had made him choose status over love. A flash of memory gripped him. Tasha, years younger, holding a newborn in her arms. His heart had clenched then, but he had walked away, telling himself it was for the best. Now those children stood before him, defending the very woman he had abandoned. The recess bell rang, and the courtroom buzzed with chaos. Reporters rushed to phones, neighbors whispered louder than before. "They look just like him," one hissed. "The judge, look at the boy's eyes." Judge Wright retreated to his chambers, slamming the door behind him. He paced furiously, pulling off his glasses. His reflection in the window stared back, older, wearier, but undeniably tied to the children outside. "What have I done?" he whispered to the empty room. Meanwhile, in the courthouse hallway, Tasha gripped her children's shoulders. "Why did you do that? Why can't you just stay quiet?" "Because he was lying, Mama," Malik said, his voice trembling with anger. "We couldn't let him get away with it." Tasha's tears spilled over. She hugged them all at once, pulling their little bodies tight against her. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, "but I'm scared too. These people, they don't play fair." Maya lifted her chin. "Then we'll just shout louder. They can't ignore us forever." Micah nodded, clutching her waist. "We'll never let them take you, Mama. Never." Tasha pressed her face into their hair, praying silently. When the court reconvened, the prosecutor pushed harder. "Your Honor, clearly this mother has no control. The children disrupt proceedings. They disrespect authority. I renew my request for DNA testing, so this court may at least determine if a father exists who can provide structure." The words hung heavy. Judge Wright's throat tightened. His eyes dropped to his gavel, but his hand wouldn't move. DNA. Father. Truth. His secret was pressing closer with every breath. The gavel finally fell. "The court will consider the request. Proceedings adjourned for today." His voice shook so badly that even the bailiff looked at him in surprise. He rose quickly, his robe swirling, his eyes darting away from Tasha and the children. But as he passed, Malik's gaze caught his, and in that instant, the boy's stubborn glare felt like a mirror, reflecting everything Judge Wright had tried to bury. That night, back in their small apartment, Tasha sat in silence. The triplets huddled close, whispering plans about what they'd say tomorrow. But Malik's mind was elsewhere. He replayed the way the judge had stared at them, the way his hand had trembled. Finally, he whispered to his sisters, I think that man is our daddy." Maya's eyes widened. Micah gasped, and in the silence that followed, the weight of those words settled like thunder before a storm. The gavel cracked like thunder. "The court will allow it," Judge Wright announced, his voice uneven. "The children may each speak briefly, under the supervision of their mother." Gasps swept through the gallery. Reporters scrambled for their pens. Lawyers muttered under their breath, stunned that a sitting judge would let 3 7-year-olds address the court. But Judge Wright could not stop himself. He needed to hear their voices, not as interruptions, but as testimony. Tasha's face paled. "Your Honor, please, they're only children." "Sometimes children see the truth more clearly than adults," Judge Wright said, staring down at her with eyes that betrayed too much. "Proceed." The bailiff brought a small stool for Malik, who climbed up nervously. He stood straight, his chest puffed out, trying to look older than he was. "State your name, son," the prosecutor said mockingly. "Malik Johnson," he answered firmly. "And how old are you?" 7. The prosecutor smirked. 7 years old, Your Honor. Hardly a credible witness." But Malik ignored him, looking straight at the judge. "I don't know what credible means, but I know my mama works harder than anybody. She cleans people's houses, she works at the diner. Sometimes she don't even eat so we can. She never lets us go without. That's what a real mum does, the gallery murmured. Some people nodded, others dabbed their eyes. Malik's voice grew louder, steadier. You say she's unfit. You don't know nothing. She's the strongest person in the world, and I'll fight anybody who says different, even you. He glared at the prosecutor, his small fists clenched. Objection! The prosecutor snapped. Overruled, Judge Wright said quickly, his gavel trembling in his grip. Tasha covered her face, overwhelmed with pride and fear, all at once. Next came Maya. She stepped onto the stool, her ribbon slipping loose from her hair, but her chin high. State your name, the prosecutor muttered. Maya Johnson, and I'm 7'2". She turned to the judge, her eyes fierce. I know you all think my mama's weak because she doesn't have a husband, but she's stronger than 3 husbands put together. Every night she sings us to sleep, even when she's too tired to keep her eyes open. When we get scared, she tells us stories. When we feel sad, she makes us laugh. That's love, and love is what makes a family, not money. The gallery broke into applause before the bailiff barked for silence. Maya wasn't finished. You say she doesn't have discipline. You say we're unruly. We're not unruly. We just know lies when we hear them. That man, she pointed directly at the landlord, stood up here and lied about us digging in trash cans. We don't do that. We have pride. We have Mama, and she gives us more than he ever could. The landlord's face turned red as whispers spread through the room. Judge Wright swallowed hard, his vision blurring. Maya's defiance stirred something deep inside him, an echo of the fire Tasha once carried when she was young and unafraid. Finally, Micah, the quietest of the 3, shuffled to the stool. His knees knocked together, but he clutched his little folder of schoolwork like armor. Name, the prosecutor sighed. Micah Johnson, I'm 7. His voice was soft, almost too soft. The courtroom leaned in to hear. I'm not good at talking like Malik or Maya, but I'm good at school, and I'm good because Mama makes me good. She stays up with me, even when she's tired, even when her eyes close. She tells me I can be anything, and I believe her. He opened the folder and held up his certificates with shaky hands. See, this is proof. She made me believe in myself. Nobody else did that. Not my teachers, not the neighbors. Just her. His lower lip trembled. If you take her away, I won't know who I am anymore. 'Cause she's my heart. She's all of our hearts. The courtroom was dead silent. Not a cough, not a whisper. Just the sound of a little boy's truth filling the air. Tasha sobbed openly, no longer able to hide her tears. She pulled Micah into her arms, holding him tight. Malik and Maya crowded close, and for a moment the 4 of them looked like a single unit, unbreakable, indivisible. The prosecutor scrambled, his confidence faltering. Your Honor, these children are emotional, easily influenced. Easily influenced? Malik shouted, wriggling free from his mother's grasp. We don't need to be influenced. We know the truth. You just don't like it. Order! The judge barked, his gavel cracking down. But his own voice shook. The gallery was alive now, buzzing with whispers. They're incredible. Those kids love her more than life. Don't they look like the judge? That last whisper spread like wildfire. A reporter scribbled it down, then another. Soon the entire room hummed with suspicion. The prosecutor adjusted his tie, glaring at Tasha. Your Honor, this circus proves nothing. If anything, it shows Ms. Johnson manipulates her children into theatrics. I renew my motion for a paternity test, so the court can identify their father, whoever he may be. The words sliced through Tasha like a blade. No, she cried. Don't drag them into that humiliation. Their father is gone. He doesn't matter. But the children looked at each other, then at the judge. Malik whispered, Maybe he's not gone. Judge Wright stiffened, his chest tightening. He wanted to strike the motion down, to silence the prosecutor, to end this trial right here. But his duty as a judge weighed heavy, and deeper still, his conscience, the part of him that knew the truth, could no longer stay buried. He banged the gavel weakly. "The court will take this matter under advisement. Proceedings adjourned until tomorrow." As people filed out, the whispers grew louder. They look just like him. Could it be true? If the judge is their father. Judge Wright rose quickly, his robe swirling around him. He avoided their eyes, avoided their questions. But as he passed the children, Malik's gaze locked onto his, sharp, unyielding, almost accusing. For the first time in decades, Judge Wright felt like the one on trial. That evening, in their cramped apartment, the triplets huddled close around their mother. Tasha was pale, her hands trembling as she folded their clothes for the next day. "Mama," Malik said quietly, "why does the judge keep staring at us like that?" "Don't ask me that," Tasha snapped too quickly, her voice cracking. Maya leaned forward. "Is he our daddy?" Tasha froze. The silence stretched heavy, unbearable. Finally, she whispered, "Don't you ever say that again. Do you hear me? Don't you ever." Micah whispered back, "But Mama, what if he is?" Tasha's tears fell onto the folded shirt in her hands. She said nothing, and in that silence, the children knew the answer. The courthouse was louder than ever that morning. Reporters crowded the steps, microphones flashing, voices rising in a frenzy. "Judge Wright, are you related to the children? Do the Johnson triplets look like you on purpose, or is it coincidence? Your Honor, will you recuse yourself?" Judge Wright's jaw tightened as he pushed past the sea of cameras. He had never been questioned like this in his entire career. Inside, the marble halls buzzed with the same rumors. Secretaries whispered in corners. Clerks stole glances at him as he walked by. In his chambers, he slammed the door shut. His clerk, Harris, followed nervously. "Sir, the resemblance. People are talking. They say—" "Enough!" Wright snapped, then softer, almost to himself. "It's coincidence. Just coincidence." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. In the courtroom, Tasha sat stiff in the front row, her children pressed against her sides. She had heard the rumors too, the looks, the whispers, each one cut like glass. "Don't listen to them," she whispered fiercely. "They don't know us. They don't matter." But Malik's sharp eyes caught everything, the way the judge wouldn't meet their gaze, the way his hands shook on the gavel. Malik leaned toward his sisters. "He's hiding something. I know it." Maya frowned. "What if he really is?" "Don't say it," Tasha hissed, overhearing. "You hear me? Don't you dare say it." Her voice was sharp, but her hands trembled. When court resumed, the prosecutor rose with a smug smile. "Your Honor, the situation is deteriorating. Public chaos has erupted. These children are unruly. Their mother is unfit. And now, speculation threatens the integrity of this courtroom. The fastest way to settle this is obvious. A paternity test." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Reporters scribbled faster. Tasha leapt to her feet. "No, don't you dare drag them into that humiliation. They don't need a father. They already have me." The prosecutor smirked. "Every child needs a father, Miss Johnson, or at least the truth about one." Judge Wright's hand trembled on the gavel. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He could feel the eyes of the world boring into him, demanding an answer. Then it happened. As the prosecutor droned on, Maya swayed suddenly in her seat. Her small body crumpled forward, her head striking the bench with a dull thud. "Maya!" Tasha screamed. The courtroom exploded in chaos. People rose to their feet, shouting. Malik and Micah dropped to their knees beside their sister. "Maya, wake up! Please, wake up!" Malik sobbed, shaking her arm. Before anyone else could move, Judge Wright shot to his feet. He tossed aside his gavel and leapt down from the bench, robes billowing. He knelt beside the girl, cradling her head in his hands with surprising tenderness. "Call an ambulance!" he barked at the bailiff, his voice breaking. "Now!" Reporters gasped, cameras flashing. The stern judge had abandoned all distance, all composure. In that moment, he wasn't a judge. He was a man terrified for a child who looked too much like him. Maya's eyes fluttered open weakly. "Mama," she whispered. "I'm here, baby," Tasha sobbed, clutching her daughter's hand. But then she saw the judge's hands, steadying Maya's head, and her heart clenched in fury and fear. "Don't touch her," she hissed at him, her voice low but sharp. "You lost the right 7 years ago." Judge Wright's eyes flickered, pain flashing deep within them, but he didn't let go until the paramedics arrived and lifted Maya gently onto a stretcher. The gallery buzzed like a hive. "Did you see him? He acted like her father. He couldn't hide it anymore." The prosecutor pounced. "Your Honor, this proves my point. You are compromised. These children clearly affect you personally. For the integrity of this court, you must recuse yourself or submit to a paternity test." The gavel slammed back down, harder than ever. "Enough!" Judge Wright roared, but his voice cracked and the room felt the quake in his spirit. He sank back into his chair, head in his hands for a long moment before straightening again. His face was pale, his eyes shadowed. "This court will recess until further notice." The bailiff called for order, but the courtroom was already in chaos. Reporters shouting, neighbors gasping, lawyers whispering. Later that evening, in the hospital waiting room, Tasha sat with Malik and Micah, pressed against her sides. Maya was resting inside, doctors assuring she would be fine. Exhaustion weighed on her like chains. Malik's jaw was set hard. "Mama, I saw it. The way he ran down, the way he held her. He knows. He knows he's our daddy." Tasha's tears fell silently. She couldn't deny it anymore, not to herself, not to her children, but she still whispered, "Don't you say that again. Don't you dare. Some truths do more harm than good." Micah tugged her sleeve softly. "But Mama, lies hurt too." She turned away, unable to answer. In his private chambers, Judge Wright sat alone long after everyone had gone. The city lights glowed through the window, but his world was dark. On his desk lay an old photograph he'd pulled from a hidden drawer, Tasha, years younger, smiling. He pressed the photo to his forehead, his shoulders shaking. "God forgive me," he whispered. "They're mine. They've always been mine." But forgiveness felt far away, and tomorrow the whole world would know what he had spent 7 years trying to bury. The hospital room was dim, the steady beep of Maya's heart monitor filling the silence. She stirred in her bed, her ribbon slipping loose from her hair, but her color had returned. Malik sat at her side, gripping her hand. Micah curled in the chair near the foot of the bed, clutching his little folder of certificates, like always. Tasha hovered by the window, her arms folded, eyes staring at nothing. For the first time in days, she looked less like a fighter and more like a woman carrying 7 years of exhaustion. "Ma," Malik whispered, "when are we going back to court?" "Tomorrow," she said, her voice hollow. "They'll keep pushing. We'll keep fighting." But Malik didn't look satisfied. His gaze drifted toward the closed door. "Mama," he said softly, "why does he look at us like that? The judge. He stares like he knows us." Tasha's body stiffened. She turned sharply. "Stop it, Malik. Don't ask questions that don't need answers." "But Mama, I said stop." Her voice cracked, harsher than she meant. Maya stirred in the bed, whimpering, and Tasha dropped her face into her hands. "God, what am I supposed to do?" Later that evening, when visiting hours ended, a shadow darkened the doorway. Judge Wright stepped inside, his robe replaced by a plain grey suit, but his presence was just as heavy. Tasha's breath caught. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed, rising to block his path. "This is not your place." "I had to check on the girl," he said quietly, his eyes darting to Maya in the bed. His voice softened. "She's strong, like her mother." Tasha's jaw clenched. Don't you dare pretend to care now." The judge closed the door behind him, lowering his voice. "Tasha, please, we can't keep this up. They'll force the truth out one way or another." Her eyes blazed. "You don't get to say we. There was no we, there was me, raising 3 children alone while you hid behind your robe and your family name." He flinched as if she'd struck him. "You think I didn't suffer? Every night I wondered." "Don't," she cut him off. "Don't you dare talk about suffering. You chose this. You chose silence. You wrote me a letter and disappeared. You let us drown while you climbed higher." Her voice shook with fury. "Now you want to play savior? Number, stay out of our lives." Judge Wright's throat worked, but no words came. His eyes moved past her, landing on the children. Malik, still pretending to sleep in the chair, watched everything through half-closed eyes. When the judge finally left, Tasha collapsed into the chair, shaking. Malik waited until the footsteps faded down the hall before speaking. "Mama," he whispered, his voice trembling, "why were you fighting like that? Why did he say the truth will come out?" Tasha's head snapped toward him, her face pale. "You weren't asleep?" Malik shook his head. "I heard everything." Her chest heaved. She pressed her hands to her face. "Lord, help me." "Mama," Malik pressed, his eyes wide. Is the judge our daddy?" The silence stretched heavy and long. Tasha's tears slipped through her fingers. Finally, she whispered, "Yes." Malik's world tilted. He stumbled back, clutching the chair for balance. "All this time, and you didn't tell us?" "I wanted to protect you," she cried. "His family, they would have destroyed us. He left because he was a coward, not because you weren't wanted." Malik's small fists clenched. "Then why should he get to decide our lives now? Why should he sit up there and judge us?" Tasha pulled him close, but he resisted. "Because that's how the world works, baby. People like him get power, and people like us get punished." "No," Malik whispered fiercely. "Not this time. If he's our daddy, then he's the one who should be ashamed, not us." The next morning, Maya was discharged. They returned to their apartment, but the air was thick with unspoken truths. Malik kept glancing at his mother, his eyes filled with questions she could no longer answer. Maya and Micah noticed too, sensing the shift. At breakfast, Maya asked softly, "Mama, is it true? Is the judge?" Tasha dropped her spoon. Her silence was answer enough. Maya's face crumpled. "He watched us cry all those years. He let you struggle." Micah whispered, "But maybe now he can help us?" "No," Malik said sharply, slamming his small fist on the table. "He doesn't deserve us." Tasha's tears fell again. She reached across the table, gathering all 3 hands in hers. "Listen to me. Whatever happens in court, you are mine. You hear me? You are mine. That man may share your blood, but he is not your father. I am your mother, and that's all that matters." But deep inside, each child felt the ground shifting. The truth had changed everything. That day in chambers, Judge Wright sat alone, staring at a court order drafted by the prosecutor, requesting official DNA testing. His clerk hovered nervously. "Sir, will you sign?" The judge's hands shook. He could barely hold the pen. Signing meant exposing himself. Refusing meant suspicion would devour him anyway. At last, he pushed the paper away. "Not yet," he whispered, but the whispers in the halls grew louder. Reporters were digging into his past. His colleagues eyed him with distrust. The walls were closing in. That evening, as the triplets huddled around their mother in the darkened apartment, Malik made a vow. "We're not staying quiet anymore," he said fiercely. "If they want the truth, we'll give it, not to save him, but to save you, Mama." His sisters nodded, their little faces solemn. And in that moment, the battle lines shifted. It was no longer just Tasha against the system. It was the triplets against the man who was both their judge and their father. The storm was coming, and this time, no one would leave unscathed. The morning sun broke cold and pale over the courthouse, but the steps outside burned with chaos. Reporters swarmed like bees, microphones flashing, voices clamoring over one another. "Judge Wright, will you order a DNA test today?" "Ms. Johnson, is it true the triplets are his children?" "Kids, do you believe the judge is your father?" Tasha shielded her children as cameras crowded closer. Malik shoved a microphone out of his face, scowling. "Back off!" he shouted. Maya clung to her mother's waist, while Micah pressed his certificates folder against his chest, like a shield. Inside, the halls buzzed with the same whispers. Court clerks, attorneys, even janitors stole glances at them. The rumor had grown too loud to ignore. When Judge Wright entered, the room fell silent. But it was not the respectful silence of routine. It was the tense silence of suspicion. Every eye tracked him, waiting for a slip, a crack, a confession. "All rise," the bailiff intoned, though his own voice quivered. The judge's gaze landed on the children instantly, lingering just a second too long. He forced his eyes down, clearing his throat. "Court is now in session." The prosecutor rose like a man who already believed he had won. His suit gleamed under the lights, his smile sharp as glass. "Your Honor, the speculation is now a distraction not only to this case, but to the integrity of this court. The whispers have grown into headlines. The people demand clarity. I hereby motion for an immediate court-ordered DNA test for the Johnson triplets." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Reporters scribbled like mad. Tasha leapt to her feet. "No, you will not turn my children into circus animals for your headlines." The prosecutor smirked. "Ms. Johnson, the truth is no circus. If you are confident, you have nothing to fear." Malik jumped up beside his mother. "She isn't scared. She just doesn't need to prove anything to you." The gavel cracked down. "Order!" Judge Wright thundered, but his own voice shook, betraying the storm raging inside him. The prosecutor pressed harder. "Your Honor, if you truly value this court's reputation, you must grant this motion. Otherwise, the people will believe you are hiding something." His eyes narrowed deliberately. "And if you are hiding something, Your Honor, perhaps you are no longer impartial." The room exploded in whispers. He said it out loud. He accused the judge. Tasha's knees buckled. Malik caught her arm, his little face fierce. "Mama, stand tall." Then Maya, voice trembling but strong, spoke directly to the bench. "Judge, sir, I don't care what they say about blood. A father isn't the man who gave us his face. A father is the man who stayed. And he didn't. Mama did. So you can test our blood all you want. It won't change the truth." Micah stood, holding up his certificates. "If he was our dad, why didn't he come to my spelling bee? Why didn't he clap when I got these? Why didn't he fix Mama's tears at night?" His small voice broke. "He wasn't there. She was. That's all that matters." The courtroom gasped, some wiping tears, others shaking their heads. The prosecutor pounced. "Your Honor, you see? These children are emotional, unstable, and their loyalty blinds them. A DNA test is the only objective path." Judge Wright's chest tightened. His gavel trembled in his hand. He could feel the walls closing in, the eyes of the gallery pinning him like insects under glass. He tried to speak, but his throat closed. He saw Malik's glare, Maya's defiance, Micah's trembling honesty, and he saw himself, 7 years ago, writing that cursed letter. Finally, his voice emerged, raw and hoarse. "The court, We'll recess for 30 minutes. The gavel cracked, and he fled to his chambers, leaving chaos in his wake. The moment he vanished, reporters surged forward. The bailiff shouted, trying to keep order. Tasha pulled her children into the hallway, away from the chaos. Her heart pounded like a drum. "Mama," Malik whispered fiercely. "He's scared. Did you see him? He knows." "Stop," Tasha begged, pressing her back against the wall. "Please, babies, stop talking about this." Maya shook her head. "We can't stop, Mama. They won't stop either. We have to face it." Micah whispered, "If the test proves it, what happens?" Tasha's tears fell. "Then the world will know the truth I've tried to bury, and it won't set us free. It'll chain us tighter." But Malik's jaw hardened. "Then we'll break the chains." In his chambers, Judge Wright sat hunched over, his robe pooled around him. His clerk stood awkwardly. "Sir, they're not going to let this go." "Leave me," the judge muttered. When the door closed, he buried his face in his hands. His body shook with the weight of years. He had built his life on law, reputation, and order. And now, 3 7-year-olds had dismantled it with nothing but truth. A knock startled him. The door creaked open, and to his shock, Tasha stepped inside. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low. "Neither should you," she snapped. "You should have been gone from our lives years ago. But here you are staring at them, breaking apart every time they speak." He stood, trembling. "Tasha, please. I never stopped thinking about you. About them." Her laughter was bitter. "Thinking? While I was working 2 jobs? While they went without Christmas presents? While neighbors whispered we were cursed? You thought? That's all you did." His hands clenched. "I was weak. I admit it. My family—" "Your family?" Her voice rose, raw and furious. "We were your family, and you abandoned us." He crumpled into his chair, tears streaking his face. For the first time in decades, Judge Anthony Wright looked less like a man of the law and more like a broken father. "They'll order the test," he whispered, "and then the whole world will know. God help me, Tasha. I don't know what to do." She shook her head, her eyes cold. "You're a judge. You hand out decisions every day. Maybe it's time you finally make one for yourself." When the recess ended, the judge returned to the bench, his face pale, his eyes bloodshot. The gallery hushed instantly. He cleared his throat, his voice trembling but loud enough to carry. "The motion for DNA testing will be taken under advisement. This court recognizes the sensitivity of the matter." The prosecutor smirked, already smelling victory. "Your Honor, delay only fuels speculation. The people deserve clarity." The gavel cracked down. "This court will not be rushed into decisions by whispers. We will proceed tomorrow." Gasps filled the room. The gallery exploded in noise, reporters rushing for the doors to file stories. Tasha clutched her children, rushing them out before anyone could swarm. But Malik glanced back one last time, his eyes locking on the judge. And for the first time, he didn't see just a man in a robe. He saw a man drowning in guilt. In the apartment, the children huddled around Tasha in the candlelight, the electricity cut off again. Malik spoke first. "Mama, he's our daddy. I know it now." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't he want us?" Micah whispered. "If the test proves it, will he take us away?" Tasha pulled them close, her arms trembling. "Listen to me. No matter what that test says, you belong to me. Always. No court, no judge, no piece of paper can change that." But deep inside, she feared the truth, because sometimes truth didn't set people free. Sometimes it destroyed everything. The courthouse was packed beyond capacity. Reporters jammed the gallery, microphones poised like weapons. Spectators filled every seat, spilling into the aisles. The case had become more than a custody battle. It was a public spectacle. The whispers of fatherhood had turned into headlines. And today, the DNA results would be revealed. Tasha entered with her children clinging to her. Malik walked ahead, chin high, his jaw set like stone. Maya's hand clutched her mother's skirt, while Micah clutched his folder of certificates tighter than ever before. Their clothes were neat, but their eyes carried the exhaustion of too many sleepless nights. "Keep your heads up," Tasha whispered. "Whatever happens." When Judge Wright entered, the silence was suffocating, every eye locked on him. His robe felt heavier than ever, every step toward the bench a battle. He forced himself into his seat, but his hands trembled as he gripped the gavel. "All rise. Court is now in session," the bailiff declared, though even his voice faltered. The prosecutor rose immediately, his smile sharp, his tone triumphant. "Your Honor, today we finally put an end to this charade. The DNA test results have returned, and they will show beyond any doubt that the Johnson children have a father. A man who has abandoned them, yes, but a man nonetheless. The truth is no longer speculation. It is science." Gasps swept through the gallery. Reporters bent over notebooks, pens scratching furiously. Tasha's face crumpled. "How dare you reduce their lives to lab results?" she cried. "They are not experiments. They are my babies." "Your babies?" the prosecutor sneered. "They carry another man's blood. That man deserves to be named." Malik leapt to his feet. "No, he doesn't. He doesn't deserve nothing." The gavel cracked. "Order!" Judge Wright barked, though his voice trembled. His eyes burned holes into the papers sealed on his desk. The results he already knew. The clerk handed the envelope to the judge. His hands shook as he opened it. The room held its breath. His eyes skimmed the words. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. The truth he had buried for 7 years now stared back at him in bold print. He swallowed hard, his voice nearly breaking as he read aloud. "The DNA test confirms that Judge Anthony Wright is the biological father of Malik Johnson, Maya Johnson, and Micah Johnson." The gallery erupted, shouts, gasps, reporters bolting for the doors. Flashbulbs lit the room. Tasha's knees buckled. She dropped into her chair, tears streaming down her face. The triplets clung to her, their small voices rising above the chaos. "We already knew," Maya cried. "He doesn't matter," Malik shouted. Micah clutched her tighter. "Mama, don't cry. We don't need him. We just need you." Judge Wright slammed his gavel, but the sound drowned in the uproar. His face was pale, his eyes wild. He had spent his career commanding rooms with a glance, but now he was the one on trial. The prosecutor smirked, bowing slightly. "Well, Your Honor, or should I say, Father, perhaps you should recuse yourself before this farce goes any further." Whispers rose like fire in the gallery. "He's their daddy." All these years he knew. Hypocrite, judge by day, coward by night. Judge Wright stood slowly, his robe swaying, his voice cracked as he spoke. "This court will maintain order." But the order was gone, his mask was gone. Tasha buried her face in her hands, sobbing openly. But Malik stood tall, glaring at the judge. "You think we care about your blood? We don't. You weren't there when Mama cried herself to sleep. You weren't there when she skipped meals so we could eat. You weren't there when Micah won his spelling bee, or when Maya sang at church, or when I got in fights because kids teased us for not having a dad. You weren't there. Mama was." Maya's voice shook, but carried strength. "If you want to be our daddy now, it's too late. You can't just walk in because a paper says so." Micah's tears spilled. He held up his certificates, his hands trembling. "See these? She made me who I am, not you. She's our real parent. You're just a stranger." The gallery gasped. Some wiped tears. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Tasha reached for them, pulling them back to her chest. "Hush, babies, please." But the children's voices echoed louder than any gavel. Tasha rose to her feet, her body trembling, her voice sharp with fury. "You see?" she shouted at the gallery, the prosecutor, even the judge. "You see what you've done? You made children fight battles they never should have fought. You dragged them into courtrooms. You made them defend me, defend themselves. And for what? For this?" She waved toward the DNA papers, her tears falling like rain. "They are not trophies. They are not evidence. They are children, my children. And no test, no robe, no courtroom will change that." The room fell silent. Even the prosecutor faltered, his smugness slipping. Judge Wright's gavel slipped from his hand, clattering against the bench. His voice cracked, raw and desperate. "Tasha," he whispered. "Children." His eyes brimmed with tears. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry." But Malik's glare cut him down. "Sorry doesn't feed us. Sorry doesn't fix 7 years. Sorry doesn't make you a father." The judge staggered back, gripping the bench for balance. He had sentenced countless men in his courtroom, but never had a verdict crushed him like this one. The bailiff tried to calm the room, but the gallery was alive with chaos. Reporters shouted questions. "Will you resign, Your Honor? Will you claim custody? Do you accept responsibility for your children?" Tasha pulled her children close, her face streaked with tears. "We're leaving," she hissed, rising from her chair. But before she could move, Malik spoke again, his voice loud enough to silence the entire gallery. "You can call him our father if you want, but to us he's just a man in a robe. Mama is the only parent we'll ever stand for." Gasps filled the room. The judge staggered, his eyes wide, his robe heavy as stone. For the first time in his life, he had no verdict, no authority, no words. And in that silence, the triplets stood taller than him. The moment the gavel fell after the DNA revelation, the courtroom dissolved into chaos. Reporters bolted for the exits, cameras flashing, voices colliding in a storm of questions. Spectators leaned over the benches, pointing, whispering, shaking their heads. Tasha gripped her children's hands, pulling them toward the door, but microphones blocked her path, shouts raining down. "Ms. Johnson, how long have you known?" "Children, do you accept Judge Wright as your father?" "Judge, are you stepping down?" Malik shoved past them, his glare sharp as steel. "Leave us alone," he shouted. Maya clung tighter to Tasha, trembling under the lights. Micah buried his face in his folder, hiding from the storm. Judge Wright remained frozen on the bench. His robe felt like a shroud, his gavel useless. For years his authority had silenced rooms with a single word. Now his own courtroom had devoured him. His name, once respected, now dripped from every reporter's mouth like poison. They barely made it to the courthouse steps before the mob descended again. Cameras shoved forward, microphones jammed into their faces. Tasha's voice cracked as she cried out, "Stop! Can't you see they're children?" But mercy was gone. This was spectacle now. Suddenly, a wall of officers pushed through, forming a shield. "Move back! Give them space!" They guided Tasha and the triplets into a waiting van, slamming the doors behind them. Inside, the children huddled against her. Tasha's hands shook as she held them, her chest heaving with sobs. "It's all right, Mama," Malik whispered, though his own voice trembled. "They can't hurt us, not while we're together." But deep inside, Tasha knew the battle was far from over. Back inside the courthouse, Judge Wright retreated to his chambers. The moment the door closed, the weight of silence crushed him. He ripped the robe from his shoulders and hurled it across the room. His clerk, Harris, stood awkwardly by the door. "Sir, the press is outside. They want a statement." "A statement?" Wright laughed bitterly, his voice breaking. "What do they want me to say? That I abandoned my children? That I let their mother suffer while I played the honorable judge? Harris hesitated. The Chief Justice has called. He wants to see you immediately. Wright's stomach twisted. The law had always been his shield. Now it was the weapon being turned against him. In the Chief Justice's office, the air was thick with cigar smoke and judgment. The older man sat behind a heavy oak desk, his gaze sharp. "You've disgraced this court," he said flatly. "The press is tearing us apart. The governor is already calling for your resignation." Wright's throat tightened. "Please, let me finish this case. Let me prove—" "Prove what? That you can judge a case involving your own children?" The Chief Justice slammed a fist on the desk. "You've destroyed every ounce of credibility you ever had. If you don't step down quietly, they'll tear you apart publicly." Wright's head bowed. His career, his reputation, his very name, gone. All that remained were the faces of the 3 children who wouldn't even call him Daddy. Meanwhile, back in their cramped apartment, Tasha sat at the table, her hands pressed to her temples. The children huddled around her, their voices hushed. "Mama," Maya whispered, "is he really gonna try to take us?" Tasha shook her head fiercely. "No one's taking you from me. Not him, not the court, not anyone." Micah's small voice trembled. "But the paper says he's our dad. Doesn't that mean he has rights?" "Rights?" Tasha spat the word like poison. "A real father earns his place. He doesn't vanish and come back when it suits him. He doesn't hide behind a robe while his children go hungry." Malik's fists clenched. "Then we'll tell the world. We'll tell everybody he doesn't deserve us." "No, baby," Tasha whispered, pulling him close. "This fight is already breaking you. I see it in your eyes. I won't let you carry it anymore." But Malik shook his head. "We're not broken, Mama. We're stronger than he is." 2 nights later, as rain hammered the city, a knock rattled their door. Tasha froze, her heart in her throat. Slowly she opened it. Judge Wright stood there, drenched, his eyes hollow. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "I had to see them," he whispered. "Just once, please." Before she could stop him, Malik stepped forward, his glare burned hotter than the storm. "You think you can just show up, after 7 years, after everything? Go back to your big house. Go back to your world. You don't belong here." "Malik," the judge whispered, his voice breaking. "I am your father." "No," Malik snapped. "You're just a man in a robe." The words hit harder than any gavel. Wright staggered back, his face ashen. Tasha's voice trembled. "Leave! Don't come back!" For a moment he looked as if he might collapse right there in the hallway. Then, with a nod, he turned and disappeared into the storm. Back in his mansion that night, Judge Wright poured glass after glass of whiskey, but the pain didn't fade. His walls, once adorned with awards and certificates, now mocked him. He stared at his reflection in the glass, a broken man, stripped of pride. For years he had sentenced others for their failures. Now his own failure consumed him. He whispered their names, tears spilling. "Malik, Maya, Micah, forgive me." But there was no answer, only silence. And for the first time in his life, Judge Anthony Wright realized he was truly alone. The city hadn't slept since the DNA results broke. Newspapers splashed the headline across every front page. "Judge is secret father of triplets." Talk radio dissected every detail. Gossip shows replayed footage of the children's outbursts, and crowds gathered outside the courthouse with signs that read, "Justice for Tasha," and "Right the wrong." Inside their cramped apartment, Tasha tried to shield her children from the noise. But even with the TV off and the curtains drawn, the whispers seeped through the walls. "Mama," Maya whispered, tugging her sleeve, "why is everyone so loud about us?" "Because people love a scandal," Tasha muttered, her voice bitter. They don't care that you're children. They only care about the story. Malik scowled, pacing the small living room. Let them talk. We know the truth. He's not our daddy. Micah clutched his folder of certificates to his chest. But what if they try to make him be? Tasha gathered them close, her voice trembling. Then we fight, with everything we have. The next morning, the courthouse swarmed like a hive. Protesters shouted, cameras flashed, reporters jostled for position. Tasha's hands shook as she led her children through the crowd, their small faces pale but defiant. Inside, the courtroom was packed shoulder to shoulder. The prosecutor stood tall, his smirk sharpened by the cameras. Your Honor, he began, the DNA results have confirmed what we all suspected. Judge Anthony Wright is the biological father of these children. In light of this, the state must reconsider custody. Their mother, Ms. Johnson, is struggling, unemployed, and facing eviction. Meanwhile, their father holds wealth, influence, and stability. The children deserve better than poverty and chaos. They deserve him. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Reporters scribbled furiously. Tasha shot to her feet, her voice raw. How dare you? These children don't need his money. They need love, and I've given them every ounce of it. I've bled for them. I've starved for them. I've fought for them. Don't you dare stand there and tell me I'm not enough. The prosecutor sneered. Love doesn't pay the bills. Love doesn't feed growing children. Love doesn't keep the lights on. Malik jumped up, fists clenched. Yes, it does. Mama's love fed us when food didn't. Mama's love kept us warm when the heat got cut off. Mama's love made us strong enough to stand here today. Don't you ever say it's not enough. The gallery erupted in applause before the bailiff barked for order. Judge Wright's gavel cracked down, but his hand shook. He tried to maintain composure, but his chest burned with guilt. He wanted to speak, to tell them he had failed, to admit that Tasha had raised warriors without him. But as a judge, he had to remain silent. The prosecutor pressed harder. Your Honor, I request an emergency hearing to determine if custody should be transferred, at least partially, to the biological father. He can provide the stable environment these children desperately need. Tasha's knees buckled. No! She screamed. You will not take them from me. Maya clutched her hand, her small voice trembling but strong. We're not going anywhere without Mama. Micah lifted his folder, his hands shaking. If you want proof, look here. Mama made me believe I could be something. That's more than money could ever do. The gallery murmured, some wiping tears. Judge Wright stared down at the children, his vision blurring. He saw himself in Malik's defiance, in Maya's fire, in Micah's tender heart. The weight of his cowardice pressed harder than ever. He whispered hoarsely, Order will be restored. But his voice cracked, betraying his turmoil. The prosecutor smirked, sensing victory. Your Honor, if you refuse to act, the world will believe you are protecting Ms. Johnson out of guilt. This court cannot allow favoritism. It must act in the best interest of the children. Gasps filled the room again. All eyes turned to the judge. His robe felt like chains. His silence screamed louder than words. Tasha rose, her body trembling, her voice sharp as a blade. Listen to me, she shouted, pointing at the gallery, the prosecutor, even the bench. These are my children. I carried them. I raised them. I sacrificed for them. And no test, no courtroom, no man in a robe will ever change that. If you want to tear them from me, you'll have to drag us all out of here kicking and screaming, because we will not be broken. The room erupted, applause, gasps, reporters shouting. The bailiff pounded for silence, but the storm could not be contained. Malik stood tall beside her, his voice fierce. You hear that? We're not scared of you. Maya's eyes blazed. Mama's all we need. Micah's tears spilled, but his voice was steady. You'll never take us away. The gallery was on fire with emotion, and in the center of it all, Judge Wright felt his heart collapse. He was their father by blood, but nothing more. He raised the gavel, but it slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. The sound echoed like a verdict. The entire room froze. For the first time in his long career, Judge Anthony Wright had no control, no authority, no mask. Only the truth remained. He was a man exposed, a father unworthy, a judge undone. And as the triplets clung to their mother, glaring up at him with eyes that mirrored his own, he knew the world was watching, not just for a ruling, but for the collapse of everything he had built. The courtroom doors swung open to a wall of murmurs. Tasha squeezed her children's hands and kept walking, chin up, eyes forward. A new nameplate hung on the bench. Honorable. Naomi Ellis. No robe on earth could hide the fact that this case had cracked the city in two, but Judge Ellis's face was calm, steady, unbothered by cameras or whispers. "Be seated," she said, voice cool as glass. "For the record, Judge Anthony Wright has recused. This court will hear final testimony and render a decision today." Maya's fingers tangled in the hem of Tasha's skirt. Micah clutched his little folder. Malik stared straight at the bench like it owed him answers. The prosecutor rose. "Your Honor, the state maintains that Ms. Johnson lacks stability. No steady income, eviction pending, utilities in arrears. The biological father, now confirmed, can provide structure, education, health care." Tasha stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "The biological father left when a belly was the only proof I had," she said, voice low and steady. "Structure wasn't missing from my children's lives. A man was." Judge Ellis lifted a hand. "Ms. Johnson, you'll have your turn. Counselor, call your witnesses." He called the social worker first. Ms. Carter walked to the stand in a blouse too plain for TV and a voice too honest for politics. She took the oath, then folded her hands. "Ms. Carter, in your professional opinion," the prosecutor asked, "are these children safe in Ms. Johnson's care?" Ms. Carter inhaled. "Yes," she said. "They are safe. They're bonded, secure in attachment and fiercely protective of their mother. The apartment shows scarcity, but not neglect. There's love there, a lot of it." A wave rippled through the gallery. The prosecutor frowned. "Safety isn't enough. Do they have what they need?" "They have what every child needs most," Ms. Carter answered. "Consistency, love, advocacy. Are the finances unstable? Yes, but the instability is economic, not emotional. I have intervened in homes with nicer furniture and dying spirits. That is not this home." The prosecutor shifted tactics. "Wouldn't a stable, affluent father be an improvement?" Ms. Carter's gaze slid to the empty chair where a conflicted robe had once sat, and then to Tasha's hands, wrapped around three little knuckles. "An improvement," she said carefully, "is measured by what a child can hold when the lights go out. On that measure they are rich." A rustle of hushed amens floated from the back row. Next came Mr. Givens, tie too tight, smirk too bright. He lied like it was his mother tongue. "Kids run wild. I seen 'em in the trash. Woman's always begging for another week." He gestured to Tasha with a flourish. "Unfit." "Cross," Judge Ellis said. Tasha didn't have a lawyer, but she had a backbone. She walked to the center, palms open, voice even. "Mr. Givens, how many maintenance tickets did I file for heat in December?" He blinked. "I, don't have that number." "Would it refresh your memory if I said 6? She pulled a thin stack from her tote, handwritten copies, stamped. "And how many days did my heat stay out?" Murmurs. Someone coughed. Mr. Givens' smirk wilted. "That's not, relevant." "It's relevant to whether my children were cold because of me," Tasha said, "or because a landlord collected his rent and forgot his duty." Judge Ellis leaned forward. Answer the question. Mr. Givens swallowed. 3 days. Tasha turned to the bench. 3 days. No heat. I boiled water on the stove and wrapped 'em in blankets, and still sent 'em to school with their homework done. That man calls that neglect. I call it survival. The prosecutor rose, red-faced. Your Honor. Sit, Judge Ellis said. Pastor Daniels testified without pulpit rumble, just a quiet truth. She shows up. When the choir sings, her babies are there. When a neighbor got sick, she brought soup. When our pantry ran low, she cleaned the shelves anyway. A school counselor took the stand with files, attendance, awards, teacher notes. Micah's certificates gleamed like little suns. No behavior referrals, the counselor said. Strong peer relationships, resilience off the charts. The room's temperature changed. Reporters stopped scribbling to listen. Somewhere in the back, a camera light died. No one moved to fix it. Final statements, Judge Ellis said at last. The prosecutor straightened his jacket and played his last card. Your Honor, the children deserve the resources their father can provide. Remove the politics and the scandal, and the math is simple. More money equals more opportunity. We are not punishing Ms. Johnson. We are elevating the children. He sat down with a little smile that didn't reach his eyes. Tasha stood alone at the center of the room. She looked so small, and yet somehow she filled every inch of space. Your Honor, I can't change the past. I couldn't make a man stay. I couldn't make a boss keep me or a landlord fix a radiator. But I have never, not once, let these children feel unloved. They don't get everything they want, but they always get everything they need. My yes when the world says no. My arms when the night is loud. My voice when theirs shakes. She turned to her kids. Tell the truth. Who tucks you in? You do, they chimed. Who shows up? You do. She faced the bench again. If this court wants to help us live, not leave. Don't tear roots and call it gardening. Judge Ellis looked down at the triplets. Children, you have spoken plenty, she said, but her mouth softened. If you have one sentence left in you, I will hear it. Malik stepped forward, straightening his too big collar. We're not giving up our mama. Maya took his hand. Family is who stays. Micah lifted his folder like a pledge. Please let us go home. Silence, heavy, holy, and complete. Judge Ellis folded her hands. This court has seen the worst of families dressed as best, she said carefully, and the best of families dressed in hand-me-downs. The law asks me for the best interest of the child. It does not define best as marble floors. Her eyes scanned the courtroom, then landed on Tasha. Legal custody remains with Ms. Johnson. The state will coordinate immediate stabilization assistance, emergency arrears support, rental mediation, food benefits, and priority job placement. A sob broke loose somewhere behind the press row. Maya squeezed Tasha's waist until Tasha yelped. As for the biological father, Judge Ellis continued, and you could hear the whole room lean closer. There will be no custodial transfer. Any contact must begin with restorative family counseling at the mother's discretion and at the father's expense. This is an invitation to accountability, not a prize. The gallery ruptured. Some clapped, some cried. A reporter dropped a pen and forgot to pick it up. Pastor Daniels closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Judge Ellis rapped once, a soft punctuation. Case adjudicated. Ms. Johnson, take your babies home. Outside, microphones lunged. Ms. Johnson, how do you feel? Tasha pulled her kids close and said the only thing that mattered. We going home. They pushed through a tide of voices into the afternoon light. It felt like a clean shirt after rain. 6 months later, the apartment keys were heavier because they opened a different door. Sun pooled on new floors. Second-hand couch, Yes, but it didn't sink in the middle. A magnet calendar on the fridge held more color than bills. On the counter, a name tag. Tasha Johnson, Patient Services, Grady Memorial Hospital. She worked days now. Dinner tasted like seasoning and not panic. Shoes off, Tasha called, stirring a pot. You're tracking half of Atlanta in here. Malik slid across the entryway in his socks, trying to hide a grin and failing. Coach said I'm starting at point this weekend. You better start with that homework first, she said, swatting air with a wooden spoon. Maya tumbled in behind him, ribbon crooked, eyes bright. You coming to the showcase, right? I got a solo. She pointed to a flyer on the fridge. Mount Zion Youth Concert, Saturday 6 p.m. Tasha tapped the paper. I'm there like choir robes, she leaned in. You wrote that new poem? Maya nodded proudly and pulled a wrinkled page from her backpack. It's called Mama Don't Break. Micah appeared slower, careful as always, clutching a letter with a gold seal. Ms. Alvarez says I made the district spelling team, he said softly, like he might scare the good news away if he said it too loud. Tasha took the letter, read it twice, then grabbed her boy and spun him until they were both dizzy. Look at you, she laughed, breathless. Look at God. The doorbell rang. Pastor Daniels stood on the porch with 2 church ladies and 3 grocery bags that looked like a sermon on generosity. Don't fight me, he said, letting himself be shooed inside. Our pantry overfloweth. Pastor, we're good, Tasha protested. Then take this and be gooder, he said, plopping collards and chicken thighs on the counter. One of the church ladies winked at the kids and slipped a bakery box to Maya, like it was contraband. Tell the choir I said thank you, Tasha called, misty-eyed. You tell them yourself on Saturday, he shot back. Front row is yours. They left the house bigger than they found it. After dinner, the 4 of them piled on the couch. The TV hummed, a cartoon laughed, Micah's head slumped on Tasha's shoulder. For a minute, the world forgot to be loud. A soft knock came as the credits rolled. Tasha's smile thinned. She walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Suit without a robe. Regret without a microphone. Judge, no, Anthony, stood on her porch, hat in hand, walls in his eyes. He had lost the bench. He wore loss like a tight shirt. Rumor said he'd resigned before the hearing board could eat him alive. Rumor also said he sat in the back pew at Mount Zion twice, left before the benediction both times. Tasha opened the door half an inch, then half a heart more. What do you want? Only to give you this, he said, and held out a plain envelope and a cashier's check. No strings. For the children's education, college funds, I've started 3 accounts. She stared at it, then at him. Guilt is a loud spender. Guilt paid for the first deposit, he said, voice rough. Responsibility will pay for the rest. He swallowed. I'm in counseling, the kind you ordered. I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm here to agree. To agree what? That love isn't something you can arrive late to and still expect a seat. He cleared his throat. If you ever decide they might want supervised time, when you're ready, my number is the same. Silence stretched like laundry lines between buildings. From the living room, Malik's voice. Mama? Who is it? Tasha didn't look back. Go finish your reading, baby. Anthony tucked a second paper under the envelope, handwritten, folded twice. For them to read when you say it's time. He stepped off the porch, then paused. You kept them safe. I didn't deserve that kindness, but you gave it anyway. It wasn't for you, she said. I know, he answered, and left, like a man who finally understood the shape of his own shadow. She stood in the doorway, the envelope heavy as history. She could slam the door on the past, and still walk into a future. Both things could be true. Inside, Malik waited with a question on his face. Maya watched her mother's hands. Micah hovered, a quiet moon. "It's nothing you need to carry," Tasha said. She set the envelope on the highest shelf and turned to her children. "Boots by the door, teeth brushed. We got a big day tomorrow." Saturday came with soft rain and a sanctuary full of neighbors. Tasha found the front row already saved with 3 name cards written in careful script. Malik, Maya, Micah. Micah squeezed her hand until circulation complained. "Don't let go," he whispered. "Never," she said. The choir swayed. Maya stepped forward with a mic too big for her hand and a poem too big for the walls. "Mama don't break," she read, voice sure. "Even when the night leans hard, even when the door don't open, even when the world says, 'Girl, you ain't enough,' Mama don't break. She bend and hold and grow us tall." People stood before she finished. Tasha cried the way you do when you finally exhale after 6 years. In the last pew, a man slipped in late and left early. He didn't speak, he didn't ask, he just listened to a little girl define strength with her mother's name in it. That night, Tasha tucked them in under a roof that belonged to them, under a future that already smelled like possibility. At the door, Malik asked the question again, the one he would keep asking until it didn't hurt. "Are we okay, Mama?" She smoothed his hair. "We're better than okay." "How you know?" "Because I stopped trying to be everything," she said, "and let love be enough." He nodded like a man and yawned like a boy. "Okay." Lights out, city hush, a mama in the hallway with one hand on a new wall, one eye on the shelf where an envelope waited for a someday she would choose. She didn't owe the world that day. She owed these 3 a morning. The narrator, if there was one, would have closed the book right there. But this is life, not paper. Lives spill. Still, if you needed a line to carry, it would be simple. Blood can name you. Love will raise you. Choose the hands that hold when everything else lets go. And in that small apartment where the future slept across 3 pillows, love kept choosing, over and over, until morning. Here comes the end of the story. If I was able to make your day, comment Mr. Hope you made my day.